What is going on, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast presented by DraftKings. I am your host, Julian Edlow. We are recording on Thursday, April 21st, and the podcast has been all over the place lately. We took a little break after NFL season. We did all our March Madness episodes. Steve hosted our MLB preview. We got our NBA playoff preview in. And we have gone all this time without talking about the NFL draft. And as we record, we are now a week away from the NFL draft, and it is time to start hitting on that and hitting on it heavily, because betting on drafts are one of my favorite markets to hit, because you're not going to be up by 20 and get backdoored at the buzzer off the glass. You're not going to be up 28-3 in the Super Bowl and wind up losing. It's an information-based market, and that's what we're betting on. And, if you talk to the right people, read the right people, pay attention to the right things, you can do really well with it. So, speaking of people that I talk with about the draft, in, a very large group of people that do so, we're going to the three-man box if you're watching on YouTube. So we are bringing in Will Brinson, CBS Sports senior NFL writer, as well as Connor Allen, the director of betting at 4 for 4. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Welcome to Unreasonable Odds.
I didn't realize that Connor had a better title than me. I might leave now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the director level, so I don't know if
you
senior
got
director
senior in there.
I actually got senior I got senior like 8 or 9 years ago, and it wasn't because I was like awesome at my job or old. It was like the position had been vacated and I was threatening to go somewhere else, and and they're like, "All right, you're a senior NFL writer now." I was like, "Okay, cool. Let's do this for 2 years. Let's go."
I mean, if it makes either of you feel any better, my job is content creator.
Yeah, but you're like on TV a lot.
Well, yes, I'm extremely famous. You guys know that.
It is always shocking to see somebody like that, or to see yourself on television.
Yes. My stepmom had issues like understanding it. She was here. Like I did one of those DraftKings promos before the Monday Night Football Patriots Bills game, that weather game in Buffalo this year. Yeah. And I had that thing pregame, and I was telling her, she was here visiting. I was like, I'm going to be on this on the pregame. And she had trouble understanding it, like on this. And I like,
yeah, like on the football game.
Yeah. She's like, but just in Boston, right? I was like, no, like ESPN's not running a commercial just in Boston. No. All right. Anyway, we're going off the rails, and we're already late. So let's talk about the NFL draft. I feel so behind because this is something that you can get involved with very early. And, I have a lot of, basketball things going on in my world as my primary sport, but I've gotten as involved in this as I can. And we've seen the number one pick go everywhere, from when it was like a pick 'em between Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau, and then it was going to be Neal, and then it was going to be Icky from NC State, and now it's back to Hutchinson minus 200 on DK, but Trayvon Walker is picking up steam, and he's plus 190. Let's just, before we go all over the board, we'll start with these like first top 5 or something, and just get your guys' thoughts. What do we think? We'll start with you, Will. What do we think about Jacksonville at 1 and how they get this draft going?
Well, in the group chat, I think I've gained some notoriety for my prognosis.
You don't need to say, and again, you don't need to say before you give away too much. You don't need to say anything you don't want to say.
No.
You don't want to give away. But
you know what? So like, Julian, screwed up is like, I realized yesterday while recording my podcast that like I had been giving this information in the group chat and like hadn't mentioned, like maybe I like referenced it on my podcast, but I was like, I need to. The Pick Six podcast, if anyone subscribe, I was like, I need to kind of throw this out there so that way like people can jump on it. But I have it on, I think reasonable authority, or like I have a fairly good secondhand source. Be honest about it. That indicates that they are going to go Trayvon Walker at 1. And this was when it was like 4 to 1, 3.5 to 1. Maybe Connor remember better than I do. Maybe even 5 to 1, where you guys might. Down to plus 190. I still, I followed up on it yesterday, and I still think it's the case. I still think Trayvon Walker's their guy. And here's the thing, and I keep mentioning this, that has really hit home for me over the last like 48 to 72 hours. Is Trent Baalke going to draft someone at number 1 overall who will give Jim Harbaugh like it'll give him props. It's like, oh, Jim Harbaugh, the number 1 pick in the NFL draft.
I saw this.
Hell no.
So I saw this, and Connor, maybe you have more thoughts. I don't know the situation that well enough, but it seems like if there's a guy that should be the number 1 pick, you can't let any of that get in the way.
I think that Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh hate each other so much. That
okay, maybe you can't. Maybe you can't get in the way.
Harbaugh is also like a super passionate guy. That like someone who like has. I mean, I have some friends who know the Harbaughs well enough that like him and his brother will like not talk to each other for like certain periods of time because they're so competitive that like they will like if something happens like they will like get such big deals about it. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure Baalke, a guy with less than a small ego, or probably bigger than a small ego, and probably gets in plenty of the way there. Yeah. So I think Will's on the right point there.
And I was going to say too, like on the Hutch thing, like if this were like Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson, I think it's a whole different ballgame. Like,
right.
You're going to take the best prospect, but we're talking, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson has sort of been propped up by like a great stretch run to the end of the season, Michigan making it into the playoffs, and then sort of the draft complex that said, oh, like Aiden Hutchinson's a great player. Yeah. I know like Mike Renner at PFF. I love Mike, but he said that he's maybe a better athlete than the Bosa brothers. I don't think so. Like, I mean, that doesn't hit home for me. And Mike's great on the draft stuff. You look at Trayvon Walker, he ran the fastest 40 by someone 270 pounds or more since 2000, like a 4.71. He's long, explosive, bendy, freak athlete. Maybe he's not as good, or he certainly wasn't as productive, but he's basically Alden Smith, who Trent Baalke drafted. And so I really think that Trayvon Walker is the play here, barring Shad Khan stepping in and saying, okay, actually, we really need to, this first pick needs to be about protecting Trevor Lawrence. And they decide to go Ike Ekwonu, which according to multiple,
I know we're all fine with that.
Yeah. But multiple reports out there have indicated that Doug Peterson wants Ike Ekwonu at 1. So neither one of those things would be entirely shocking. Maybe it's more likely that they try and go Linderbaum in the second round. That makes everybody happy. You get the Jason Kelsey comp in addition to the bendy edge rusher that you can pair with Josh Allen.
Yeah. I mean, 2 other factors I'd like to add to that too. I also prescribe to the theory that at this point, like we, over the last 2 to 3 weeks, have heard nothing that Jacksonville likes Hutchinson or like is really into Hutchinson. It's only been outsiders being like, Hutchinson's great. Hutchinson is awesome. Blah, blah, blah. Like that doesn't even matter. Like, it's just like analysts saying that he's good, when in reality, all that matters is the Jacksonville Jaguars' opinion of him. He also has short arms. Trent Baalke, notoriously a long-armed lover. I mean, he's got a little T-Rex on. So, it's like
long-armed lover.
Trent Baalke, notorious long-arm lover. You're right. I mean, like the traits that Trent Baalke likes, Walker possesses, and Hutchinson doesn't. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's the move.
Let me put it this way then. If you're going to make one bet on this, and you could bet them both, but if you're going to make one, DK Sportsbook, as we record, Trayvon Walker's plus 190 to be the top pick. Maybe the better bet in sacrificing the juice is just to take Hutchinson over 1 at plus 160. And then whether it's Walker or any offensive lineman, Ike, Neal shocks the world and jumps up there, win them all on over 1.5 on Hutchinson at plus 160.
Yeah, 100%. Just with that 30 cents difference. If we were talking like 3 to 1 or 5 to 1, what a lot of us betted at, when I probably
when you gave us this news,
when I lobbed out this information, forgetting there's like 30 people in this chat, like it's like some I don't really even know. Yeah, I mean, I think that, and that numbers come down. You want the outs because there is a chance that they end up going offensive line at 1. I mean, I've heard people say that they think that's entirely possible still. And like I said, we're a week out. Everything you hear is that the Jaguars still they haven't definitely decided or don't definitely know. So there's a possibility that ownership steps in and says, no, we need to protect Trevor. Because Cam Robinson, you can't tag him again next year because it'd be the third-year tag, which is 144%. And, they haven't worked out a deal yet. So I think you're right. I think the plus 160 is the way to go there. And I know we'll get to the, I'm trying to see does DK have the number 2 pick.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
do all sites do this where it's like these picks are always out of order? Like every
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is weird. The number 10 pick must be a new market and it's snuck in there. Otherwise, everything's in order.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Um,
Oh, that could be
but
because
yeah,
there's a one
number
at the front
two,
of it.
number 2 pick. Let's just go to that. It sounds like we kind of all agree that over 1.5 on Hutchinson at plus 160 is probably the best way to bet the top pick now and just win
Yes.
on anybody but Hutchinson. So what are the lines thinking it to? It's, I mean, Thibodeau is down to plus 150 here to be the second guy. Like he was supposed to maybe be the number 1 pick here, and then he was juiced to over 5. He was going to be out of the top 5. Now he's supposed to go 2, 3, 4 again. But if Jacksonville passes on Hutchinson, now Hutchinson's there at plus 160 for the second pick.
Oh, and by the way, you also bring in, let's say that the Jaguars are idiots and are smoke screening Kayvon Thibodeau, and they want to take him at 1 with that plus 160 over on Hutch. You get that too. So
true. Yeah. It just covers way more. And like you said, Will, this is not a draft. The last 2 drafts, we've had Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. It's like, not only was it a no-brainer who was going to go, but the number 1 pick was worth significantly more than it is worth in this draft, which in some ways, diminishes the value of the picks after it. I guess.
Even 2018, the Browns wanted to control who they could draft at quarterback, and you were not going to entice in 2018, 2019, 2020. Maybe you could have done it in 2017, but those 3 years, you were not going to entice one of those 3 teams to trade out of the first overall pick. The Jaguars would love to be enticed. Like they would kill to get out of the first overall pick and move down and have more options, but it ain't going to happen.
Exactly. Nobody wants it. Nobody needs it. So Connor, I guess, thoughts on the number 2 overall pick, because I don't really have, like, I haven't bet on the number 2 pick. I haven't bet on anyone specifically to the Lions. I don't really have anything, I guess, going on here. Other than Hutchinson not being 1.
Yeah. So I think if we kind of go through that scenario, I think we're all pretty confident that Walker or, not Hutchinson is going to be 1. So we're looking at Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, both being there. Recently, I mean, as of yesterday, Kayvon Thibodeau went from being, like 6, 7, 8 to 1 to be the second overall pick, all the way up to being the favorite at plus 150. And this was a pretty universal steam across the betting, across most betting platforms.
Info. It was like, but with no info. There was nothing like, it was like a DJ tweet or like a mock draft. It just
nothing.
That's what I mean. This stuff usually needs like a Rappaport Schefter type tweet for this kind of movement. So
it was very strange. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, that makes me think that we missed something or someone knows something. Usually I don't buy into draft steam too much, but I think it's very much in the realm of possibilities here. And I know that Will picked up some intel that the Lions really, really love Kayvon Thibodeau. But it depends on, do they love him more than Aiden Hutchinson? Or is that just based on someone hearing the Lions absolutely are going to pick Thibodeau, but kind of assuming that Hutchinson's going to go 1? Like if he's still there, local guy, he is a good prospect, fits a lot of, Dan Campbell's whole, mentality, I think. But again, that's an outsider's perspective. So I don't know. Will, do you have a strong take on number 2?
Yeah, I don't think this is a bettable market, because it's like if any, again, like you said, Connor, if something was like 6 to 1 or 7 to 1, then I would take Thibodeau there for sure. At plus 150 and then Hutch at plus 160. I mean, even even Malik Willis is 10 to 1. There's just not a lot of juice, because like I think it's more like should be like more like 30 to 1 for Malik Willis to be second overall, just in terms of like the real possibility of it. Now he could go 2 overall, but I wouldn't be betting any of these numbers at number 2 overall, because my gut is telling me now that Thibodeau is going to be the second overall pick, and that I think that the 2 competing narratives for the second overall pick, one, the local product thing, and I'm not saying it's Connor's narrative. It's something that's been repeated. It's like, I mean, he's from local, he's local, and the sort of player he is. Like all that makes sense, but then there's also the Thibodeau narrative, which has told us that we have a player who is all about his brand and is like has a big ego. It's like, well, you know what? That's every NFL player. every NFL player is about their brand and has a big ego. If they didn't and they weren't, they wouldn't be in the NFL, because it's, you have to be that type of alpha male to make it this far. So I think that maybe those narratives created this separation between Hutchinson and Thibodeau. And now the reality, and remember, there's a delay in what teams think internally and talk about internally, and then how it gets out to the media. And so I think maybe that we're sort of seeing that delay come about where, all right, maybe the Lions like Thibodeau a lot more than we thought, and they're just going to take the best player at number 2 versus going with the local product. So I like Thibodeau at 2, but I don't think it's bettable at that number.
Yep, agreed.
All right. Houston Texans, 3rd pick overall. It sounds like we might see 2 edge rushers as the first 2 picks. Is Houston taking that 3rd edge rusher that is left over? Are they going to the offensive line? Or are they doing something else?
Yeah. I mean, I think that in this scenario, I think Hutchinson at anything more than like 15-1 is certainly in play at 3rd overall, because as we just mentioned, we think Walker's 1. We think that it's like probably 50-50 Thibodeau or Hutchinson. So you're basically getting, I think that the Texans would sprint to the podium with Hutchinson still on the board at number 3. Right. Now at 20-1, I mean, I think that's a great bet. And I'm sure now, as we're talking about it on a DraftKings podcast, it will not be 20-1, come next week. But
well, it is right now, and it will be
right now.
It will be when this gets on Twitter on Thursday night, April 21st.
Exactly. So I think if, say, Hutchinson goes 2, I don't think that they really strike me as a team that likes Thibodeau, with Caserio and the whole, culture personality thing. They take on some culture, like some personality risks, but generally they want guys who like love football. And that's kind of been the question with Thibodeau, is like he takes plays off, lack of motor, stuff like that, things that I don't think they're really super into. So in that case, I would lean towards Evan Neal or Ekwonu. In this case, Evan Neal, we've, heard through the grapevine that they prefer Neal to Ekwonu, but again, I think that the play here is Hutchinson for me at 20-1.
I want to say, and I don't want to quote him directly, but I'm pretty sure that Lance Zierlein, who's really plugged into all things Houston and is one of the main NFL media draft guys. I want to say that he said that Caserio, or like that Thibodeau is not this. I want to say he heard something about that. Connor, do you remember if there was a Zierlein tweet about Thibodeau not being a fit there? Maybe it was even Walker. I agree with you in that sense. I think that there's probably a chance that Thibodeau that they would prefer to go with either a cornerback, knowing that they won't get that corner. Like Stingley and Sauce Gardner are not going to be there at 13. Right, so if you want to get that cornerback, you got to take him at 3. There's a chance there'll be an offensive lineman there available for you at 13, not Neal or Icky, obviously. The other thing that Lance definitely has said on the Athletic podcast is that he believes increasingly that after this year, that the Texans will move on from Laramie Tunsil. And that's why Icky or Neal makes sense, because they have a lot of versatility in where you can play them. You could have Titus Howard on the right side, Laramie Tunsil on the left. You could slide Icky into guard and then move him to the left side after you go away from Tunsil next year. Or if you want to, Neal, you would have to play at the right side and then figure out what you want to do with Howard before moving him back. So I think that's why I guess I kind of think they could go cornerback here, but it's so high for a cornerback, and it's just a very non-Belichickian style thing to do, which you sort of have to assume that Caserio will operate that way, even though we don't have a long history of it.
I mean, that would definitely shake things up. And I have unders on Stingley and Sauce, so that works fine with me if you want to start the corner market up at number 3 overall. If it doesn't get started at number 3 overall, there is a chance they could get started at number 4 overall, because we have seen some mock drafts have Sauce Gardner going number 4 to the Jets, who probably use one of those picks you would think on a corner if they can. Ideally, like maybe if they want to use it on somebody else at 4, they're ideally thinking that Stingley is there at 10. Both guys have seen their props drop significantly throughout this process. Let's lump the Jets together here, because we're about to go to the Giants, both of which have 2 top 10 picks. What are we thinking for the Jets overall? But what do they want to do at 4 and 10 combined, I guess? And is there anything still on the board that you think is playable for the Jets?
Yeah. So, I mean, Connor Hughes, an insider with the Jets, has been, repeatedly saying that they're going to go edge and wide receiver at the 4 and 10 picks. And I think makes a lot of sense, but I think the way the board kind of falls at 4, it's a little bit of an awkward situation because Thibodeau is
let's say, so you just said they want to go edge at 4. Let's say that the top 3 picks in any order are Walker, Thibodeau, and
Hutchinson,
and those 3 are off the board. You're going to take the next guy at 4. No,
I think then it becomes. So it's crazy to think about like what the Jets have to do from a internal mock draft perspective, right? You have to basically mock out 15 different scenarios at minimum, and then have them kind of play out. All right, what do we do if this happens? This, and this, and teams do that all the time. I would guess that they have probably the majority of their internal mocks are 2 edges and 1 offensive line, or 3 edge rushers coming off the board. And at that point, they're basically deciding, okay, because I think, I don't know, man. I mean, they could go DL, they could go DLOL, they could go wide receiver, cornerback. And not necessarily in that order, just, I think at this point, I feel most comfortable with them going corner at 4, even though I know Connor Hughes says that's not going to happen, and then wide receiver at 10. That's sort of where my head's at right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, based on how our hypothetical board and how we've been going through it shook out, I think that certainly makes the most sense, because then you're looking at a chance between Ahmad Sauce Gardner versus Drake London, or Jamison Williams or Garrett Wilson, or you take your pick at an offensive lineman. They just talked today in the press conference saying that Mekhi Becton didn't show up to their early training stuff, and it didn't really seem like too big of a deal. At least in my opinion, but they really emphasized that I saw multiple tweets, really going through it. It seemed like something that they were trying to send a message to Becton. So I don't know. I think that kind of puts them in play for, Icky or Neal at 4, if there's both on the board.
Okay. Let's go to the Giants, I guess, before we talk about the wide receiver market and how that's going to shake out in the top 10. The Giants are obviously 5 and 7. Clearly one of those 2 picks has to be an offensive lineman, right? To protect Daniel Jones. And then you could do a number of other things. Sauce Gardner is the favorite right now at plus 300 to be the 7th overall pick.
Interesting.
But his draft prop has now moved to 5.5. So he's probably going to be a top 5 pick according to the odds, or at least as a coin flip to be.
He's not making it 7.
Right. So they might have to take him at 5 if he's there. And at 5, the co-favorites are Neal and Icky, both at plus 300. Sauce Gardner's right behind them at plus 450. How do we think the Giants are looking to make it out of here at 5 and 7?
So with the Giants pick, in theory, and obviously you can get burned by this, but if you're the Giants and you want to take an offensive lineman, you don't wait till 7. You have to take him at 5, because the Panthers are, I would say, the most likely team to draft an offensive lineman out of anybody in the top 10. If you're gun to my head, I got to pick what team is going to draft an offensive lineman. It feels like the Panthers, assuming that they have, and I think this is the case, gotten away from drafting a quarterback at 6. If they trade down, obviously a whole different ballgame. I wish that at 5 we had better odds on Charles Cross or even Icky or Neal. But the problem with the Giants pick at 5 with these odds is I don't think there's a clear enough value, given there's so much variable at 3 and 4 right now that we don't know. Because if the Jets draft Icky, that maybe the Giants go Neal and put him on the right side. They worked out Charles Cross on the right side and really liked him there, apparently. So there's just a lot of variables in play depending on what Houston and New York do, that I would probably want something closer to I don't know, maybe even 10-1.
Yeah, no, I'm not really betting on this, as it stands right now, because you mentioned it. I think the Cross stuff could very well be smoke too, because when Bob McGinn does a poll of a bunch of executives, I think just 2 of 17 executives had Cross as the first offensive lineman that they liked. And, a lot of other executives have really not pushed for Cross to be the offensive tackle. Comes from a Mike Leach air raid offense, very little run blocking experience, tons of pass blocking experience, though. I mean, over 1,200 snaps and pass blocking reps. So again, I think that he's a fine prospect. He's just got to fit what you want. Is that what they want? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, another thing that we're just not really sure about here. But yeah, so for me at this point, I'm confident that they come away with the corner with one of their two picks. Confident that if Gardner is there at 5, they pick Gardner. If Stingley is there at 7 and they don't pick Gardner at 5, they will pick Stingley at 7. So that's probably what I'm most confident in with the Giants.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
All right, that's fair.
Okay. Especially with the like, it would be shocking if the Panthers sniped them on a cornerback.
Oh yeah.
Now,
after using a top 10 pick on corner last year, yeah.
Now somebody could trade up with the Panthers to, like, if the Giants are like, all right, we're going to take Icky, and then we know like Sauce is gone, we know Stingley will be there. Somebody could, then you could get sniped, but I think that would maybe be their ideal scenario.
All right, that covers pretty much the majority of just going through the teams in the top 10. Before we go to draft position, I guess just looking at the top 5 and top 10 markets on DraftKings, do you guys think that there's still any value anywhere on the board with those? I think the top 5 kind of feels done at this point to me and played out. We kind of know who most likely those guys are going to be. We just don't know the order. So top 10 is really the only one I'm looking at, but still it's gotten bet down. Like, even if you think somebody like Jamison Williams cracks the top 10 on a wide receiver run, like, that value is gone. It's down to plus 175 now versus what it once was. Anything still on the board there for you guys in top 5, top 10 markets?
The only thing that I would add that I think is still in play that has like reasonable odds would be Trevor Penning plus 500. If Stingley goes 7 to the Giants, I think that the Seahawks are very much in play at 9 to grab Penning. So at plus 500, I don't think that's necessarily a bad look. But again, as you mentioned, I think a lot of the value has kind of already been sucked out of both these markets. I know Will and I both got in on some Jamison Williams action as well to go top 10. So
I don't have the Jamison Williams action.
You don't?
No,
that's sad.
I'm
sorry.
It is a geography based reason why I don't have Jamison Williams top 10. But
Gotcha.
I think that's definitely it's a strong bet. It is interesting. We talk about how we're a week away. This has been such an unusual. It's eye-opening to see how these draft prop lines have moved over the course of the last month, because I feel like last year, and this is not not saying that DK didn't move it or didn't move it appropriately. It's just like everything was a little bit softer and lingered a little bit longer, and I think that's just part of the natural progression of these props becoming legal and widespread, and people talking about it more in advance than ever before. So it's tough because you're like, I think the average fan is going to wake up on like Thursday, April 28th, and be like, all right, what are we best bet? Let's bet on the draft. It's like everything's minus 200. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I think actually one top 10 bet that I think is not bad value: Jordan Davis at 4-1 to go in the top 10. I know that a lot of people be like, oh, his over has creeped up to like 15.5.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 2-down player, blah, 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 blah. That dude ran a 4.78 at 341 pounds. He's like you don't want to call him a unicorn because unicorns are typically like smaller. He's like a I don't know what it is, but he is a freak of nature.
Big unicorn.
Yeah, gigantic unicorn. Yeah. As Josh Norris of Underdog has pointed out, no one has ever come into the league with this size, this speed, this strength. Like it's just, there's nobody you can compare him to. And if he becomes a 3-down player at the NFL level, he's going to be absolutely destructive. He's got great pass rush skills, or at least better, I think, than people give credit for. So I think at 4-1, that's a pretty good prop. Daniel Jeremiah said that his floor is 14 with the Ravens. So I like his under. Daniel Jeremiah, by the way, was a scout with the Ravens and worked with Eric DaCosta, knows the building very well, was there when they drafted Haloti Ngata. And that's sort of the comp for Jordan Davis, I think. So 4-1 to me to be a top 10 pick in a draft where we can't say anything is certain inside those first 10 picks, even 1 through 10. You don't know. I like that value a little bit.
Okay. Let's just go to the draft positions now, the over-unders, because those are generally the most popular plays on the draft. And it's also where more value probably still lies, as these, player to be a specific pick or go to a certain team is a tight window to hit. And these top 5, top 10 markets have kind of played out. There's a good amount of them on the board at DraftKings. So I'm gonna scroll through and just rattle some off that I think, based on our conversation so far, I feel like we probably have an agreement that we still like based on the number on the board. And then I'm just going to open it up to you guys if there's anything else that you still like. But scrolling through it, based on our conversation so far, Derek Stingley, I mean, I guess you could here's a top 10 bet that I would say.
Hey, by the way, shouts to DraftKings for having just an absurd number of props. Like this is like a lot of opportunities to get action down.
Great. The stage is yours to
share
those types of messages.
Yeah.
I have been hounding the sportsbook ops team to make sure to let me know when stuff is opening so that I can promote it and let people know, and pushing them to just include more and more. So I'm happy that people are enjoying them.
There's two I think on here that stand out to me.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind. I would say Kayvon Thibodeau under 4.5 at -145. I think you're going to see that juiced up a little bit more, a lot more in other spots. And, based on
I already have him over 5.5 is my worst draft bet that I have.
Oh, okay. I was like, you like that? I was like,
oh no. And I hate it, but I have it.
I think our buddy
money at least.
Yeah, that's right. I think our buddy didn't VR. I think VR got
that was his first draft prop.
Hey, look, the steam was coming in that Thibodeau was going to drop
went one way and then went the other way.
Yeah. I mean, Cam Robinson, Greg Robinson, over, under. I mean, what's the difference, right?
John Thibodeau, Kayvon Thibodeau.
The thing is, like, I'm just being stubborn, but like, I agree with you. He's going to go 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. I mean, if I was you, I wouldn't buy back on the 4.5 with a 5.5 in hand, because that you're just begging to get like just completely.
I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to eat my L.
Yeah. Kyle Hamilton over 10.5.
I was going to get to that one.
Feels pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I bet 5.5, 6.5, 8.5.
Yeah, 5.5.
Yeah, it opened.
I didn't even know 5.5 was a thing.
2 months ago, it opened at 5.5, and 6.5 was like plus money for a good month.
I've got some 8.5, I think, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, either way, he's not going top 10. I know ESPN's model and simulation has him 100% to go top 10. I don't know who made the model, but the expected draft position is 12. Like, expected draft position among like all the Oxford mocks is like 12 point something. Odds makers right now, in a market that is constantly being bet by people who are doing all the hard work and grinding, is 10.5 with the over at -130 at DraftKings. So I think you guys are right on the right play here. I think Washington at 11 makes a lot of sense for him. Houston at 12 or Houston at 13 is fine. Beyond that, though, I mean, there's a ton of other places where you could go.
I think Atlanta is probably your only. Actually, Seattle at 9 could hose you, because Seattle does weird things. But I mean, it's not like Kyle Hamilton's like out of left field.
Like Seattle at 9, I could kind of see. If Atlanta, in the state that they're in right now, use a top 10 pick on a safety. That would be ridiculous.
Like, whoever Atlanta takes with this number 8 overall pick, assuming they don't trade back, is immediately like their second best player.
Yeah.
Behind Kyle Pitts. I mean, like, that's how bad that roster is. You just cannot take a safety there.
Yeah, I don't think you can do it. And Seattle, like last year, Seattle, like, I could kind of see it. I think it makes less sense for what Seattle is now, but again, who knows?
Well, I mean, the thing with Seattle too, let's not forget that they invested multiple first-round picks and a brand new contract in Jamal Adams. Like, these teams, we don't think about it in this way quite as much, but these teams budget out their salary cap and how much, like, what kind of resources they can allocate to certain positions. Like, the reason the Legion of Boom kind of died off is because you just couldn't pay everybody at all those positions while also paying Russell Wilson. And, and Cam Chancellor got hurt, but like to have Jamal Adams and to add Kyle Hamilton in the draft, that's just an egregious use of resources on the safety position.
Yep. And so it kind of shows, just based on the 2 plays that you gave out, Will, it shows what this draft betting market is like, because Thibodeau was available at under 5.5 at like plus 160 at one point in time a couple weeks ago. And Hamilton was at 6.5. And we were talking about, is he going to go number 2 to the Lions at one point in time in mock drafts? And now it's moved to a juiced under 4.5 on one and a juiced over 10.5 on the other. And we're still here saying that these are probably the right plays. So there can be a lot of movement when these markets are just off. And even though they have moved, I would not be afraid to get back in. And I do have a bunch of Kyle Hamilton over 6.5 at plus money. And I'm with you. I would comfortably say like he's just not going to be a top 10 pick. So you can go over that. You can go over that 10.5, and you're probably going to be fine there.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. Another one that I like that's still on the board here. We mentioned it earlier. I got 2 more here. Derek Stingley under 10.5. I think that's a minus 130. I think you're able to get him going as high as, 5 to the Giants. If the Texans pick Sauce at 3 is very much in play. I think more realistically, probably 7 or 9 would probably be where I'd expect him to go. And then he could even go 10 to the Jets, as you guys mentioned.
He go 8 to the Falcons too.
Yeah, I think after his pro day where he, had a 39-inch vertical, 4.4 40, the biggest questions were revolving around his injury, his Liz Frank injury that he suffered last August. I think he's in a great spot to go under there. So I like that one a lot.
I should point out I was wrong. AJ Terrell is probably the second best player in the Falcons. That was this pick would be the third best player in the Falcons.
Yeah, fair. No, that's fair. The point stands though. The depth on the Falcons, especially their receiving depth chart, and that's kind of where this next pick is. I think Jamison Williams under 14.5, even at minus 165. Still, just so many outs here. The Jets need a wide receiver so bad at 4 and 10. If we follow their actions, they tried to get Tyreek Hill, they tried to get Deebo Samuel, at DK Metcalf, any big name.
Adams.
They have
literally everyone.
One of those 2 picks has to be a wide receiver.
If it's not a wide receiver, I think the drafts can just be dubbed a failure, regardless of who they get. And then 7 or a pick number, I think 5 and 7, the Giants are sneaky in play for a wide receiver. It wouldn't surprise me that much. Falcons at 8, just straight up the worst wide receiving depth chart that I've ever seen. Ever. Most people can't even name the 3 Falcons receivers right now. And until I looked it up, I could not, like a month ago. And so they have to pick a wide receiver too, I think, or at least they very well should. And then you're also getting other outs here. You're getting Washington 11, Minnesota 12, Houston 13, and even the Ravens don't even have that great of a receiving core either at 14. So
the Falcons lost Russell Gage and Olamide Zacharias, and both of those guys would be their number 1 receiver right now if they were still on the team. That's a rough.
Not good. It's not good. So they'll probably draft Kyle Hamilton.
You have a better chance of hitting a Calvin Ridley parlay than naming all of the Falcons wide receivers on their depth chart.
Well said. I agree on both of those. And again, these are things like I wish I had the time in basketball season to write up these articles and put these plays out as the numbers come out. But I have some Jamison Williams under 16.5, heavily juiced, but paid it and it's moved. And I'm on Stingley under 12.5, where it was for a while.
Connor's quitting his job if JMO goes top 5, right?
Man. I'm like paying for my wedding with Jamison money. At that point,
let's see. What is he currently on DK Sportsbook? Plus 1,600 currently to go top 5 for Jamison Williams.
Yeah, I grabbed some. He was 50 to 1. And I also added some we can talk about this real quick. The 6th pick is a sneaky trade down spot, right? So, not sneaky. But I think it's a sneaky spot for a guy like kind of the long shots, like a Jamison Williams, Drake London, something like that, where a team trades up into that spot, like a wide receiver needy team. And for me, Jamison Williams fits kind of the mold there. We know that the Cardinals are interested in him. We know that the Saints are interested in him. We know that there's a bunch of other wide receiver needy teams in that late teens, early 20 section that could very easily trade up for him. So I think that at 6th pick too, it's like 50 to 1 still. It's a massive long shot. Like you should not be putting a ton of money on this unless you're a sick individual like me. But like Jamison Williams is 50 to 1 and Tyler Linderbaum's 40 to 1. There is a substantially greater chance of Jamison Williams being a trade up candidate at 6. I don't think the Giants would take him, but I do think Atlanta and Seattle potentially, if they're going to, all right, we're
we're redoing some stuff. DK Metcalf might be unhappy. He's due for a big contract. Let's trade DK away. We'll bring in a wide receiver that we drafted in the first round. Like the names listed above. And this goes back to, like a lot, draft prop markets are largely reactive, and that's just sort of the nature of the beast until you get closer to the actual draft. But like Kenny Pickett is plus set 175 to be the 6th overall pick. That makes sense given all the ties that Carolina has to Kenny Pickett. But to Connor's point, if they trade out, then all of a sudden you have a bunch of wild cards there. I think Derek Stingley Jr. at 50-1 is a good bet for the number 6 pick as well. If I'm taking, I would take Jamison and Stingley there under the assumption that Sauce Gardner is already gone. And as we mentioned, maybe, the Giants are like, all right, we're going to take our OL at 5 and then get Stingley at 7. And the Panthers are going to be willing to trade down from 6 for cheaper.
They can still get their good offensive linemen at 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever.
But I promise you, they will be willing to take a discount from the trade chart.
Oh yeah.
Because they just desperately need more picks. And Scott Fitterer noted like trade junkie, like he loves to trade down. So I think that's a great point on Williams. And I think I would sprinkle on Stingley too.
Yeah. And I mean, also like you talked about this draft particular, like the top 10, we have really like very little idea after pick 1 of what happens. So I think kind of embracing some of that volatility there.
One.
Man, just get it over with. I'm going to the
draft.
draft in Vegas. I think I'd probably just like leave, call it a day, go get some bottle service somewhere, and just be happy with the rest of my life. I don't need anything else.
If Walker goes 1 or
yeah, we got Walker 1, Jamison 2, doesn't matter. Just call it, hang it up.
Order. Are you gonna be there? Are you gonna be the draft?
I am. Yeah.
I was gonna be in Florida, and now that got canceled, so I'm just gonna be sitting. I'm gonna be sitting right here.
One time, I'm gonna be sitting right here too.
I shouldn't have told my wife it got canceled. I should have just been like, "Yep, actually, they're sending me to Vegas now."
Yeah.
We almost
still time.
Yeah.
We almost had something going on in Vegas for the draft, but nope. I'll be sitting right here watching it.
Well, you see, Julian, you like me work for a company that is partnered with the NFL, and the NFL does not like its partners who don't. You're like, there's a reason only 2 people can broadcast from Vegas. It's ESPN and the NFL Network.
We got VSiN over there. Shout out.
That's true.
Oh, I love VSiN
under the DraftKings umbrella.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, no,
there's
no,
a reason
I know what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
Yeah.
But I've made very clear that I don't mind doing work with VSiN if they want me out there.
Same. VSiN. Also, shout out to Mitch Moss, who my buddy Will Newman went out.
Unreasonable Odds alum. Mitch comes on the pod from time to time.
My buddy went out there for a bachelor party. I DM Mitch, was like, he wants to come swing by the show one morning. He's like, he's gonna get up and come see the show. And sure enough, Newman got out there and
yeah, probably still up when that show goes, not to get up. But all right, I echo a lot of the draft position plays that we have kind of given out together so far in this segment. I want to talk about a couple more before we move on and then wrap that I think are interesting. I want to start. We're talking about laying juice here. Trayvon Walker under 3.5 at -275. That's a ton of juice. But are we going to see him fall outside of that top 3? How many scenarios do we have where he falls out of the top 3?
He's going 1.
I think he either goes 1 or he's not in the top 3.
Okay. So there's no chance at 2 or 3 for him.
Well, I don't think there's no chance. I just think that and I guess the other thing too, like you got to kind of play out the different scenarios. Like, if the Jaguars take an offensive lineman, I don't think there's any chance that Trayvon Walker goes top 3. If the Jaguars take Thibodeau or Hutch 1, Walker could still sneak in there, but I don't know that it's likely because I think the Lions will go either Hutch or Thibodeau, whichever one isn't taken, which means then you need to bank on the Texans to take Walker. So I would much rather take Walker first overall at +190 than lay any kind of juice on Walker over 3.5. And in fact, you could even take the over at plus money with Walker on 3.5 and pair it with the first overall and maybe have a potential to, like, I really don't think he goes top 3 if he's not first.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I kind of agree with that. I do have some under 3.5 action, but the closer we get to the draft now with Thibodeau entering the picture kind of like very prominently for Detroit, the less I like kind of the under 3.5. I think that Will played it the right way.
And also you probably didn't lay 275 either. Right?
No. It was a lot less.
Yeah, that's moved significantly. Okay, we're talking O-line, a good amount up at the top of the draft. Charles Cross, his number's set at 7.5. I have some over, not at the -155 that it's at. I don't see, especially as potentially, the top two guys slip. They were, going to go 1 and 3 or whatever. And now, they're moving towards the back end of the top 5, maybe. I don't see how, and we're talking about the 6th pick potentially being up for grabs. We're hoping the Giants, the Giants at 7 is the way that you lose this. They go a different position at 5. The top 2 are off the board, and Cross is their top rated guy at 7. I just don't see as many paths to losing this one as winning.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Cross is really interesting because I think it all depends on whether you believe what the Giants said. I think we mentioned earlier in the show, but if Cross is their guy, I think the unders right play at whatever plus money. If he's not their guy, I think Cross could easily fall out of the top 10. And I think you should be able to get that at kind of like plus money. So whenever DraftKings will likely open up that market, you guys have had it in the past.
That's what I was going to say. I'm waiting for that. We're all waiting for that. Yes, no top 10. Yes, no first round. Like we need that market. I'll say something today
because right now, all those guys are super juiced. Basically the hold on that market is really high on like the amount of juice. Because once you offer a no, so the no's are not going to be the opposite of the yes, at least in according fashion. I mean, there's guys like Matt Corral, who's like -130 to be a first round pick. Give me all the plus money on Matt Corral not to be a first round pick. Things like that. So we'll see when those things pop, but we'll go from there.
The Cross thing, I think it's more likely that it's over 7.5. I do worry though, if I'm betting that, about the Giants at 7, who have been linked to Cross, and while they have a need at right tackle, not left tackle, they, according to somebody said it in chat or it's been reported out, and I had somebody else text me about it. They worked him out at right tackle and apparently really liked what he did at right tackle in their private workout. And then the Panthers at 6, if Carolina ultimately doesn't go with a quarterback, I really think they don't have a choice but to go with a left tackle. And if Icky is off the board at, let's say, 4 or 5, and Evan Neal is off the board at 3, then I think the Panthers will probably reach and take Cross at 6. So that would be the only concern. Now, if Neal falls to them at 6, then Cross is over. It feels like almost a lock, because it means that either the Giants took Icky or I don't know, like that. At that point, I would feel good about it. But
regardless, I don't think any of us really want to lay -155 on the over. So I think the better position is like the derivative on the yes, no on the top 10.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. And real quick, 2 guys that are moving in opposite directions in terms of their draft prop and are now both set at 5.5. Sauce Gardner and Evan Neal. Is there anything still to do with these? It feels like Sauce Gardner is going to be in that top 5 to me, which, it was 8.5 a while ago. Hopefully you just got the 8.5. But is there anything still there? And is there anything still there on Neal? Neal, I have some over 3.5. So that's a nice little middle right there on 3.5, 5.5, which is how you want to play that. But if you're just, like you said, Will, if you're opening up the board, and none of these numbers will look the same next Thursday if you're opening it up on draft day, but if you're getting into it in this last week, is there anything still there?
Man, I don't have any Sauce Gardner under. I'm mad about that. I got Stingley under 12.5. I don't have any Sauce. I don't know why I didn't.
I was late to the party on Sauce. I got him I missed it, and it was like that heavy juice at 8.5. So I played it, I think, at like -140 at the 7.5 under.
Maybe that's what happened. And now I'm like, 5.5 is a bit rich.
Yeah.
Just because
5.5 is definitely a bit rich, but if you told me I had to bet it, I'm going to bet that he's a top 5 pick.
Yeah, for sure. And well, so looking at that, then what is let me see if I can bring it up. What is his
top 5 is -115. And so under 5.5 is -125. So it's better to bet top 5 than
you bet the top 5. Yeah, but that's just really like like a little like same site shopping basically is.
Mhm.
That'll correct itself.
Yes.
But-
Somebody probably after somebody listens to this podcast and realizes
but
that
they obviously are there. The markets take a little while to catch up.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think he's more likely than not to go to either at 3, 4, like 3, 4, or 5 feel like really good landing spots. He's been connected there. And then I think it's 3 of the last 6 drafts we've seen a cornerback be drafted in the top 6, or maybe it's even top 5. And it only happened like 3 times in the previous 30 years. So it's something that teams are clearly more comfortable with doing. I just sort of wonder, and here's the other thing too, is that, you have this top 5 pick, you're the Giants or the Jets. Are you going to be like, well, we sort of need an edge rusher, Jermaine Johnson's there? Or are you going to say, you know what, we're just taking the best cornerback in the draft class. Like we're taking this like Cincinnati dude, physical, long, can play great press man. I mean, like, I think the move for these teams is going to be to take, especially, a Joe Douglas type or a, Joe Shane, first years are going to be like, all right, let's just take the best player on our board. That's Sauce Gardner. So I would feel good about it, but it's obviously you would rather have that 7.5, 8.5.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling great about that. One of my bigger positions. Currently, Evan Neal, though, I don't know what to do with. I honestly, at this point, with the offensive lineman, I've kind of just thrown my hands in the air and just going to let it happen. I don't know. I mean, every team, I think that especially Neal and Aquanu are so tightly clustered, and they're different players. Aquanu, the physical specimen, a little bit more raw, but like more upside. Neal, more polished, has played multiple positions. Obviously, was at Alabama. Like a little bit more safe, but again, might not have as much upside as Icky. I just think that we don't know how teams value that stuff internally. And so kind of like pairing them at specific spots, I mean, is really difficult. And so kind of figuring out where they go is hard. I'm just staying away. And I think that the over 3.5 is probably the right play because his only out was the Texans. But now at this point at 5.5, again, 3, 4, 5, I think are all very much in play for an offensive lineman. Which one? I'm not sure. So I think that it's tough for me to take the over there. So, and
the other thing too, is that when you look at 3, 4, and 5, all 3 of those teams, and this applies to the Jaguars to a degree, but all 3, the Texans, Jets, and Giants all have a theoretically high caliber starting left tackle, either who they've invested in with Tunsil, Mekhi Becton, and then Andrew Thomas. So do you want to use a top 5 pick on a right tackle? Or, as I pointed out earlier, like I think they'll move on from Tunsil, and we don't know if Becton's going to work out. He's skipping voluntary workouts right now. Like we don't know if he's going to end up being the guy they hope he is. So that's sort of the unknown there too. Is like we don't know internally how these guys feel about those specific players. We can only guess, and then you also have to hope that they're willing to take a right tackle in the top 5, which is, that's you want to protect your quarterback. Right tackles are very important. Franchise tag is the same for both sides, but that's a rich price for a right tackle.
All right, I want to do 2 more of these over-unders real quick. We'll spend like a minute on each. I've bet this. I'm going to write it up. It's one that hasn't really moved that much other than a little bit of juice, but a guy that I like and that I think is picking up some steam in the top half of the first round, that would be Devin Lloyd. Linebacker from Utah, under 18.5. I like this. We've seen a handful of mock drafts. I've seen one where he goes 5, one where he goes 6, one where he goes 9. I don't necessarily agree with him cracking the top 5, but I have a sprinkle on him plus 2,000 top 10. And I like the under 18.5 in like 30 seconds each. Yay or nay, you guys on board? Connor, you can start.
Yeah, I mean, lean under. I think he's super volatile. It's a guy who could go top 5. A guy who also would not surprise me to be available in the late 20s. Like off-ball linebackers just aren't valued as much, and I think that's the biggest issue with it. But again, like there are a ton of fits. 18.5 gives you a good amount of wiggle room because again, the positional importance kind of starts to play a little bit less of a role, I think, in like after pick 10 because people aren't feeling like they have to absolutely nail the pick. Now, you get to 11 to 18 range. I think there's a little more flexibility to pick a guy like Lloyd, who's obviously good talent, just not quite valued position.
Yeah. And you've got teams sort of in that range with the Eagles having the 2 picks, right? And, you have the Chargers who might have a need for that as well. Yeah, I would lean towards the under there as well. But I mean, look, anything you're taking over under inside, like outside of that top 10, I mean, anything in this entire draft is going to be volatile. Like there's a chance that we are dead wrong on a lot of like where these guys might land. It's the opposite of last year.
It reminds me a little bit of Kyle Hamilton. Isn't just that the really good football player that maybe plays a position that you can't justify a top 10 pick on, but once you get to that like 10 to 18 range, I feel like he's going to go there, except we're getting 18 and a half and not 10 and a half.
There's 100% like a, I don't know what the discount would be called, but it's like, it's like Kenny Pickett. You take Kenny Pickett at 6. Oh boy, have you really put yourself up for risk here? You take Kenny Pickett at 16. It's like, all right, he fell a little bit. Like that's pretty good value. Like that's just how the mindset of these, the front offices work, because it's the mindset of how the fan works.
All right. And real quick, I think this is the highest number for a guy on the board at DraftKings right now. And that would be 59 and a half on one John Metchi. I think he opened 62 and a half, maybe. I think that Metchi's going to go in the, early to mid second round. I think he's worth a little under flyer there, especially with how wide receivers are expected to fly off the board in this draft. Is John Metchi going to go in the top 59 picks?
Yeah, no, I think so. I played a little bit on the under. I didn't see that it was actually up on DraftKings, so I'll probably be adding to my position a little bit because, I think multiple sources have mentioned that they see him as kind of like a early second round pick. And then Bob McGinn came out with his article yesterday, had him as actually the 6th ranked wide receiver, above George Pickens, above Christian Watson. These are rankings developed like that are pulled from executives in the league. So this is not just his opinion. Like these are just like actual sources in the league saying that they think a guy like John Metchi should be like a fringe first rounder more so than a second rounder, or more than like a late second rounder. So I think the under 59 and a half, pretty good wiggle room. Like you said, wide receivers should fly off the board. I think I like the over 5.5 wide receivers. I don't think he touches the first round, but I think that early to mid second is very fair for a guy like Metchi.
And if you look at the teams that are going to be drafting in those spots, you have, I know the Chiefs have a pick there, and the Packers have 2 picks inside the second round inside of 59. So you're looking at let's say that the Packers draft a defensive player and a wide receiver in the first round. People are like, oh, they only took one wide receiver. How could they? Well, they're probably going to come back and get another one in the second round. And sort of the same things with the Chiefs. We've seen the Chiefs not always invest first round picks in those wide receivers. It wouldn't be surprising if they decided to instead, use one of those picks on a defensive player, maybe 2 of them on a defensive player, and get their wide receivers there in the second round. That would make a lot of sense there. So I like that under too.
All right, we got to start to wrap this up. But I will, give each of you a minute before we do so to answer 2 questions. Number 1, is there anything that we have not covered on this draft that you feel passionate about that you want to share? And number 2, just based on what is left on the board right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, your best bet as of Thursday, April 21st on the NFL draft. You each have a minute. Connor, go ahead and share what's on your mind.
Something
and you can say no. There's nothing that you need to touch on extra, and just give your favorite play. That's fine.
Okay. Well, real quick, I'll give one that we have not touched on that I thought was a good look here. Not something that I'm absolutely in love with, but Kyler Gordon first round. You're able to get that, I believe, at like plus 130 to plus 150. Some people plugged in people in the NFL basically have spoken to a lot of teams, said that they all have a first round grade on him. And that, when talking to teams, they said that he should not be there and will not be there in the second round. So I'm willing to take kind of like a little stab there at plus money. I think that if we're looking at something that's probably a 50-50 proposition and, is not being priced as such, I think that there's, hence value there. Probably best play here. I talked about it enough, but Jamison Williams under 14 and a half, just, take it to the bank.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's going to suck when Connor's not getting married. Jamison Williams goes.
Yeah, I mean, Jamison Williams goes like 16 or 20, and find me on the streets in Vegas.
I mean, you better start live streaming yourself. It gets to like 11, and Jamison Williams hadn't been drafted.
Is this the part where Will gives out his best bet as Jamison Williams over 14?
No.
Oh man, I will book any amount of action still. No.
I love Jamo too, and I think that it's sort of the natural progression for the ACL tear to push a guy down. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, people are like, oh, well, coverage. Like Jeffrey Simmons is a great example, right? I mean, like teams just aren't scared of ACLs anymore. They don't bother them at all. I think one bet that I think this number is going to move, and it's Tyler Linderbaum's under 27 and a half. It's minus 125. everybody's talking about, nobody beats a center. It's going to be tough. Like, is he definitely going to get taken? But I think there are going to be a couple teams that really like Tyler Linderbaum. And I also believe there's a couple teams who are confident that Linderbaum as a comp for Jason Kelce is going to be an extreme target by the Jacksonville Jaguars with the first pick of the second round. Like I mentioned, maybe they go pass rusher 1, then get Doug Peterson, his guy, at the top of the second round. I think people know they have to jump him to do that. And you look at that, you look at the draft order, and there are definitely some opportunities down here where you can trade back up, whether it's the Patriots, a team that loves to trade down, obviously, or the Packers. They have multiple picks. I think there'll be teams that are willing to trade. So I like Linderbaum's under. I think he's sort of being undervalued in the market relative to how teams think about him as a pick. And a best bet, sheesh, I don't know. It's hard to say like best bets after they all move. You know what I mean?
I know. Like I would say for me, like my best bet at this point, and it's crazy because it's moved so much, it would probably be like Stingley under 10.5, Stingley to be in the top 10.
I think
Stingley or Kyle Hamilton over the 10.5.
I was going to go with Hamilton over 10.5 or Thibodeau under 4.5. Like I think
obviously you want Hamilton at 6.5, but
yeah,
it's 10.5 now. So
yeah,
do we like it or not?
Yeah, I still think Hamilton falls. I think 11. I think I wouldn't take it at 11.5 because I think Washington really likes him and will potentially take him at 11. I think Thibodeau under 4.5 at -145 is a great pick. There's all four of the teams picking in the first 4 are possibilities for him, in my opinion, to take him. All 4 have a need there, and this constant buzz that forced him to be pushed down now is reversing course as we get closer to the draft. And that typically is a sort of a prompt for what might be more realistic than, the stuff that was a month ago. Sorry, Julian. I know you had the 5.5.
No. Yep. Yeah. No, I'm cooked there. That's just the way it is. You play some of them early, you lose them.
Did you bet that too, Connor?
I did. Yeah, I had a little bit on that for sure. I mean, it's one of my smaller positions, but I mean, I just kind of sat on it and didn't hedge out, and now I'm just holding the bag. But sorry,
I didn't have it available. Otherwise, I would have bet it too. So.
But if we at the same time, if we weren't betting this stuff early, like you just got to get burned on a couple of them. Otherwise, you don't have a Kyle Hamilton plus money over 6.5 in your pocket. So
you're 10.5 and you're petrified when 7 gets there because your buddy's got 6.5 and you got to. But now he's gonna win. You're gonna lose. That's terrible.
Right. So
there were far more W's of closing line value than L's. I think that was like the only one among our group that was like kind of stood out. The rest were all good.
Think back to last year too with Pitts and Jamar Chase and and Waddle and how much those 3 guys moved in terms of eventually it was like Pitts over under 5.5 minus 300 or something like that. Right. And like if you got it early enough, you're getting like 6.5 minus 125. And so it is worth it to take those risks if you think you got to play them early. I mean, you can't get mad at yourself.
Exactly. All right. Well, hopefully that helped you guys listening with some NFL draft stuff. We'll get this up, and stuff will move, but the information will still hopefully hold some value here for a few days and this last week leading up to the NFL draft. Thank you to Connor Allen. Thank you to Will Brinson for both of you guys for coming on. That is a podcast. We are going to have another Unreasonable Odds early next week with another guest or two discussing more NFL drafts. So we're going to have more of the same. Maybe the lines will have moved. Maybe we'll just get some new bets from some guys that are going to come on and share some information. But I think this was very helpful. So thank you to both of you guys for coming on. And that is it.
Thanks for having us.